Boss Rush 900 day 3. So this one's a pretty farmable, pretty easy day, but it is an Arcane resistance farm, because we have Echo of Medivh as the first boss, and everything afterwards is artillery strikeable. So we're going to be using Drek'Thar with his Drek'Thar spellbook equipment, and this is again bugged to do twice as much resistance as it states on the tooltip, so this 131 is actually 262. You need this reasonably high, but not crazy high. The main things you're trying to prevent are the red ad, the anomaly guy. He has an Arcane Salvo ability, which is Tyranda's second ability that repeats whenever it kills something. So you need to have enough Arcane resistance to stop that from killing your Rattlegore and then repeating and just keep killing him until he runs out of lives. So that's the main thing you're trying to prevent. And then on turn 2, Medivh can also use the power of the Guardian ability, which deals damage equal to double the amount of Arcane bonus spell damage that he has. And it does that twice to a random target. So you're going to need to be able to hopefully survive that on your Deathwing, or just have him not cast it, because he doesn't always cast it. Or you need to create enough targets on the board to increase the odds of it not killing your Deathwing when it does happen. And you can also just re-roll when you get Arcane anomalies that are too high. But this does seem to be the fastest way to farm day 3. We also last had this same boss as the first boss on level 500 day 3, so I'll link the video in the description below for how we did this the previous time. It was basically using Drek'Thar for resistance, and then we either used a Baron Geddon with Genn as an activator to clean them up, or we did a Hook Tusk Malchezaar strategy. So I'll link that in the description. Those fights take a lot longer though, so if you have the damage on Deathwing, also if you want to be able to kill Echo of Medivh every single time, you're going to need 185-ish damage on Destroy All Life. I think 184 is good enough. You basically need to do the maximum anomaly that you can get on Echo of Medivh should put him just below 7,000 HP. So if your Destroy All Life combo does about 7,000, you should be good for even the very highest health anomaly rolls on Medivh. So to go over the comp here, we've got Resolve of Undying on Deathwing, and this could be whatever. Rattling Bones on Rattlegore, the Spellbook on Drek'Thar, and then your artillery strikes shouldn't really matter, but I've got Gilnean Strength on Genn, Garna Drinks on Edwin, and Dragon Rune Axe on Voone. So let me just jump into it here. Also, there is a chance that you'll have to do a little bit of cleanup after you reconnect to skip the animations. And that's because there's a possibility that one of the ads, I think it's the Anomaly, uses the double cast ability. It's the same one that Tyranda has. And if it double casts the 7-speed ability from Medivh that copies your mercenaries, it'll put an extra set of 3 of those copies on the bench, and you'll have to kill those with your cleanup when you reconnect. Okay, so on turn 1, I like to summon a Spirit Guide, because it's going to be a soaker for Power of the Guardian if Echo of Medivh casts that next turn, to try to prevent that from hitting your Deathwing. The only reason you would want to not summon the Spirit Guide is if the damage from the Arcane Salvo here is high enough to one-shot your wolf. So in my case, I have 262, plus another 70 here, so that should be enough to survive the salvo and prevent it from repeating. So it's fine for me to summon a wolf here. But depending on your Arcane resistance, and if there is an Arcane Salvo on turn 1, you may want to not summon that wolf. If you get that Arcane resistance high enough, you could just always summon the wolf, though. So this Echoes of Us All ability, if that gets doubled on turn 2, then you'll have to do cleanup when you reconnect. So this Elun's Grace ability is the one that doubles it. So if this goes off and then he casts this Echoes of Us All ability a second time, then you'll end up with 3 things you have to clean up afterwards. So here you just have to destroy all life, but you can also kill this Rattlegore, and the main reason to do that is if there isn't a Echoes of Us All ability here, and it's not double casted, by shooting this Rattlegore, it prevents it from putting an extra mercenary on the bench, because if this Rattlegore is left alive, then he'll spawn 3 copies. One of those will go to the bench because of this Rattlegore being in the way, and then you'll have to do a cleanup. So I usually shoot this Rattlegore, but you don't have to if Medivh is not casting this Echo's ability again. And if there is a Power of the Guardian, you want to summon another wolf here. If there's not a Power of the Guardian, you don't really have to do anything with Drek'Thar. So I guess I'll let us see the combo go off here. Actually, the Blessing of the Ox is going to activate on every other... So it's going to make the damage requirement actually doubled. Oh, never mind. He doesn't have the Blessing of the Ox. It's like a rank 3 Blessing of the Ox, so it only activates like one time. So I guess the damage requirement is going to be probably like 188 or 191, or sorry, 187 or 190. So somewhere around there. It's basically going to absorb one of these Destroy All Life activations. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect here. I'd forgotten that he had that ability. But yeah, at least thankfully it's not the max rank one where every single time that he takes damage it would give him a new shield, so it would effectively cut your Destroy All Life damage in half. It's only like a rank 3 ability or something, so it just gives him it's like 2 activations and one of them goes on an ad that dies anyway, and so it's not that big of a deal. And though that like 184 or 187 or 190, whatever it ends up falling on, that would only be if you hit the absolute maximum possible health anomaly on the highest health enemy, which I believe is Medivh himself. So it'd be the maximum blue health anomaly.
Where have your journeys taken you?
So here we should just reconnect to Rattlegore plus our artillery strikes being alive and just collect our treasures. And I hit an artillery strike, so there we go. None of the equipment on Rattlegore matters. So pretty good artillery strike odds with this comp. You also, if you don't want to worry about the Power of the Guardian, you could replace one of the artillery strikes with Arfus and lead with that on turn 1. The downside though is obviously you lose one of your artillery strikes, so it reduces the odds of hitting your artillery strike treasure afterwards. But that would make it so that your Destroy All Life goes off before a possible Power of the Guardian cast. So you just kind of have to pick your poison there on whether you want the lower artillery strike odds or the possibility of having your Deathwing die to a Power of the Guardian cast. And then if you were to bring Arfus, you wouldn't have to worry about summoning those extra wolves with Drek'Thar, because they're really just there to soak the damage from Power of the Guardian. It's possible to beat this without Drek'Thar, but the problem is that Arcane Salvo is going to wipe you like every time that it casts on turn 1. So if you went with just like a Arfus, Bwansamdi, Rattlegore as your opener, you would just auto lose to Arcane Salvo pretty much. So that pretty much covers day 3. This is probably the best farm for the week so far. I guess some people liked farming on day 1. You also could farm day 1 with the Deathwing Uther comp, but that requires a very heavy investment in Destroy All Life and Uther, so it's very expensive to get started on that. And you have to reconnect 4 times per run, but you would have a 100% win rate if you did that. It's just it's still not like a super great farm, and it requires so much to invest in. even get started with it. That's why I didn't try to like feature it or anything. And I even personally have not invested in Ysera to catch her up to Destroy All Life. And my Destroy All Life is actually a bit lower than where I want it to be. So to go over the Deathwing breakpoints a little bit, if you wanted to be able to kill a 400 HP boss that you do not crit with Deathwing on level 900, you would need about 226 damage on Destroy All Life. And that's with a maximum health anomaly roll, so the very highest possible anomaly roll on the very, very highest HP bosses. That's also not factoring any passives or like boss combos on the 4th boss, where you have like Terran Zoo reducing damage on everybody or something, or like a fire resistance passive or something like that. Most of those 400 HP bosses don't have any of those kinds of passives though, so they would probably have a little bit lower requirement. So if you did meet that 226 damage threshold for 400 HP bosses, you would probably cover all the instances of bosses that do have some amount of resistance as well. The thing is, so that costs a lot to reach that point, but once you get there, to maintain that going forward, you only need to put like 1 or 2 points in Destroy All Life every week from then on to maintain it. So it ends up being around it. So it actually decreases in cost in terms of the number of runs you have to do to pay for that over time. Because you eventually don't have to upgrade Rattlegore anymore, but that takes like 2 years worth of doing this before that comes into play when he reaches 500 HP. If you're just trying to keep up with the weekly increases. But the maintenance cost is only like 1 or 2 points, and that takes like it's around like 12 or 13 runs worth of renown. So like you have to farm like 12 runs worth per week to keep up with it. Every other week though, because you're like some weeks you would get an extra 5 HP on Rattlegore and get an extra summon from the Rattling Bones. And other weeks when you only put like 1 point in, you wouldn't be crossing that threshold of getting an extra summon on Rattlegore. So it basically works out to where you need like an extra summon on Rattlegore every week to keep up with it. So some weeks you would need to put in 1 point, and some weeks you would need to put in 2 points in Destroy All Life in order to keep up, and then you just keep up your Rattlegore HP with whatever this damage is. So it kind of alternates, where like 1 week you'll need like 12 runs worth of renown, and the next week you'll need like double that, so like 24 or 26 or something like that runs worth of renown to keep up. And then eventually it tapers off though, where after like a couple months from now, you would only have to average out that like 12 or 13 runs per week, instead of needing to hit that extra activation on Rattlegore every single week. So the cost actually decreases, and it ends up being not too crazy. Like doing, say it's like a 5-minute run, so not like a great farm day or whatever. 5 minutes times like 26 runs would end up being like 130 minutes. So like 2 hours of farming per week to maintain it. That's not really all that much. So it is a big investment to get there in the first place. But if you do, maintaining this comp long term is pretty cheap. And then if you wanted to do Ysera on top of that, to have the option of doing that like full clear with Deathwing Rattlegore and keeping Deathwing alive with her healing, that costs 50% as much as Destroy All Life. So again, the cost to buy into that is pretty high, but maintaining it, you would just be adding like 50% onto those numbers. So instead of 2 hours, it would be like 3 hours per week to farm to maintain your Ysera, your Deathwing, and your Rattlegore. So that's day 3. Pretty decent farm, and good luck on your runs.